Come reveal the glory of the living God. Spirit of the sovereign Lord.
Hi, welcome to the Testimonies of God. My name is Minister Kim Thomas, and the host, Laura Savinsky. She's not here today. However, she will be back on the next show. Thank you for tuning in. But today we have an awesome woman of God. Her name is Adana. And I just thank the Lord that Adana is able and she was willing to come out and share her testimony with us. And I know as you guys listen in, you're going to be blessed. And just ask the Lord to minister to your heart in the areas of how the Lord is going to be using her to share some things that she has overcome. So thank you so much. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank
Adana.
you.
Oh, I just thank the Lord that as on a short notice, you know, you were able to adapt your schedule and come out and share your testimony. But before you get started, Adana, if you could share with us and the audience your life before you surrendered your heart over to the Lord Jesus Christ.
Well, I did not grow up in church. My family, they were very kind of hippies and, you know, living in the woods and exploring all sorts of different religions. We actually would travel to communes and go and worship whatever guru underneath the tent. And so I had this strange picture of spirituality at a young age. My dad grew up Mormon, my mom grew up Methodist, but they'd kind of thrown those things off and pursued this new age kind of lifestyle. And I was maybe 12 years old, and a friend of mine from school invited me to her youth group. And I, you know, was kind of socially awkward and didn't have a ton of friends, and she was a good enough friend that I thought, well, I really should try. I should see what this is all about. And I was really nervous. But we went to her youth group, and it was amazing. The people were so kind. And I grew up with a lot of dysfunction, so I wasn't used to people being just very sweet and inviting. And they wanted to see me. Week after week, they asked about me. And how are you? And what's going on at home? And I thought, what is it that they have? Whatever that is, I want it. I want it. And one day they had the prayer of salvation and said, you can receive Christ and you can have what we have. And I said, yes, I want that, please. So I prayed that prayer of salvation that day, and I was 12 years old. And ever since, it's the most amazing decision that I've ever made was to accept Jesus Christ into my heart.
Praise God.
Yeah.
So that was when you was 12.
I was 12.
Okay,
Yes.
So from that time until you become an adult, what started transpiring in your life?
Well, I went home after that experience and didn't have a Bible, didn't have any idea what it would mean to fall after Christ. You know, I'd said it and then I was like, now what? And I went home and I thought, well, maybe my parents have a Bible somewhere. I searched all through my dad's books, and indeed he had one Bible, which was unusual considering where my parents were in their faith journeys. They were not walking with Christ, so I don't know why they had a Bible. But I took it off the shelf and I began to read. And I asked my dad eventually where he got this Bible, and he said that it was from one of his patients. My dad was a doctor. And he said that this patient had passed away and he had given him this Bible before he passed away. Wow. And that was the only thing that he'd wanted my dad to have. And it was my lifeline. I would go into my bedroom and read my Bible all by myself. And my parents never took me to church, but I just read and I, just sort of soaked in the Word of God. And it changed everything about me from that point on. And I was always praying to God, not knowing what I was doing, just praying in my bedroom, saying, okay, God, come be with me, and reading the Word and growing. And eventually in college, I did find a church, got involved in a church group and in church ministry. But in college, you're also looking for the right guy and trying to meet someone. And in college, unfortunately, as a believer, I knew I had to marry someone who had the same faith as me. And he couldn't be into drugs, and he couldn't be, he couldn't be drinking, he couldn't be running around with all the girls. And so I thought, I've got to look for the right guy. And I met someone. I met someone who went to a school next door. It was an all-male military school, and I thought, hey, you know, they look good in their uniforms. And I thought, oh, here's a great guy. He didn't drink, he didn't smoke. I didn't think he was chasing the ladies. He seemed to be upright. He was always at church, and I thought, I found the right guy. And our senior year, we dated and eventually got married. And I thought, thank you, God, I found someone who's just so perfect. And we'd been married for about, fast forward, I'd been married for about 10 years. And something different happened in our relationship. He was distant and cold. And I couldn't put my finger on what had changed. I don't know at what point he became this person. I thought, wait, I married a good guy. I married a Christian guy. We had always been in church. And he was just very distant. And
Now, may I ask you, how long have
Yes.
you guys been married before you noticed that change?
well, we'd probably been married maybe about 3 or 4 years when I first started
Okay.
to notice a change. But it was slow. It wasn't something that happened overnight. I couldn't put my finger on any one thing or any one day or any one experience. It just sort of seemed to happen slowly over the course of the years. And then by the time we'd reached 10 years, it was like he was this other person. I didn't know who he was. And he wasn't the person that I had married. He would come home from work, and he would eat dinner, and he would go sit on the couch and wouldn't speak. And he wouldn't speak to me at all, to the point that I just would essentially run up to the bedroom and hide, because I couldn't be around him. It hurt just to be around him. I would try and talk to him, and he'd be like, I'm busy. I don't want to talk to you. I'm going to watch TV. Or, it would just shut me out anytime that I tried to just engage in his life and find out what was going on in his world. He would shut me out. And so I was very lonely. And in this time, we had our first child, which at first I thought, well, maybe it's because, things happen. You have a young family, and you're not sleeping, and so maybe we're just not connecting because we're both tired. But I started to get this feeling in my gut that something else was going on, and I began to have dreams, and I had dreams that he was having an affair. And I had dreams for about a year. Not every night, but I can remember 3 or 4 really significant dreams that he was having an affair. And I would ask him. I would wake up in the morning so panicked, and I would say, "Is something going on that I need to know about?" And he'd say, "Oh, you're imagining it. Nothing's going on. Nothing's going on." And so I would say, "Okay, nothing's going on. It's fine." But I began to pray and say, "God, if something is going on, I need you to reveal it. I need you to show me if something is going on." And that was a long time. I prayed that for a very long time. But then I got to a point one day where something just was terribly wrong, and I knew it. I couldn't find any evidence of anything, but it just felt terribly wrong. In your spirit, you get that gut sense. Something is wrong. I began asking my friends to pray. I said, "You need to pray for my marriage. I don't know what's going on, but I feel like we're going to get a divorce. So begin praying for us, please." And at one point in time, I'd gathered with 3 of my girlfriends, and they were praying for me and laying on their hands. And one of them looked at me just right in the eye, and she said, "Adana, he's let someone in." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "He's let someone in." That's the only phrase that comes to my mind, is he has let someone in. And she said, "Have you asked him if he's having an affair?" And I said, "Yes, and he always denies it." And she said, "He's let someone in." I said, "Okay." We wrapped up our prayer time and left. And a couple days later, I was with another friend. We were wandering around the mall, and I was telling her, what was going on in my life. And she said, "Adana, I don't know why, but the phrase just keeps coming to my mind. He's let someone in." And I thought, that's a strange way to say it. That's not a typical way. Most people would be like, "Girl, I think he's got a woman on the side."
Exactly.
They wouldn't say he's let someone in. That was an unusual phrase. So I thought, oh, that's strange. This is the second time that I've heard it. And sure enough, I heard it a third time from a friend later that week. The friend said, "Adana, I don't know what to tell you, but he's let someone in." And by the time I heard it the third time, I was like, "God, you were talking directly to me." So I didn't even wait till I got home. I got in the car, and I had my son in the back seat. I think he'd fallen asleep. And I called my husband, and I said, "I don't know what I'm supposed to say, but you've let someone in." And the phone went like dead silent. He didn't say anything for a couple of minutes. And I'm holding my breath going, what is he going to say? He said, Adana, I need to come home, and I need to come home right now. I said, okay. So he met me at home, and I don't know where my son was at this point. I imagine we probably put him down for a nap because, you know, it's time to have some adult conversation. And he said, okay, so there's a woman at work. I said, so there's a woman at work. What's happening with this woman at work? And he said, well, it's not what you think. I'm attracted to her, but we're not involved. We're not involved, but I feel really guilty about it because I'm attracted to her. So I would, you know, I need you to pray for me. And I said, okay, of course I'll be praying for you. And he said, but I've done everything to kind of separate myself from her and not to be involved. We work in different departments, so I don't see her very frequently. I was like, okay, we can deal with this. We can deal with this. We're going to pray through this. And I felt like, okay, it's okay. That's not that bad. That's not that bad. But the next day came, and I woke up that morning with that same gut sense like something's wrong. He was getting dressed to go to work, and I was asleep, and he was actually leaving. He was walking out of the door, and I sat up straight in bed, and I said to him, whatever you're doing, you need to stop. I don't know why I said it. It's just what came to mind. I said, whatever you're doing, you need to stop. And he was halfway out the door, our bedroom door, and he looked at me, and he went, okay, and left. And so all day I prayed, and the next day I prayed, and he was putting our son to sleep. Maybe 2 nights later, he was putting our son to sleep, and I got this just wild thought, like, I need to go march up there right now and confront him because something else is going on. And you know, as a woman, sometimes you just get that, like, you get that craze, like, I'm going to talk to him right now. So I did that. I marched up the stairs, and I said, I don't know what it is, but something is not right about this. And he was rocking our son to sleep, and I don't know why I didn't wait, but it was just felt like it was on me. I had to go and find out. And my son looked at my husband and said, Daddy, your pants are on fire. My 2-year-old. He had never heard that phrase before. He never heard the phrase, liar, liar, pants on fire. And he said it, and I said, you need to put him down right now. You need to put him to bed. You need to come downstairs. We need to talk. My husband came down, and I said, what's going on? Whatever you told me is not it. There's something not right about what you've told me. And he said, okay, you're right. There's more. He said, though I told you nothing was going on beyond that I was attracted to her, we've been exchanging emails. And we've been exchanging emails for a while. And I said, okay, so how involved are you? Oh, it's not that big a deal. Nothing other than the emails, a few flirtatious things. And I sat on that for a few minutes and thought, that's still not right. And version 1 became version 2, became version 3. Version 3 is she's married, and we're a little more involved than I was telling you. Version 4 is not just that she's married, but the only reason I'm still here with you is because she didn't want to leave her husband, and we were really involved. Version 4 turned into version 5. Version 5 was, it's not just that I've been involved with her, but over the course of our marriage, for the entirety of our marriage, I've been online viewing pornography. And I thought, okay, God, I don't know that I can manage. This. And then it got worse. That it's not just pornography, but profiling certain women of a certain type to build relationships with them online and contacting them. And I thought, okay, so you're contacting them and making arrangements to meet them in person. And he would meet people off of places like Craigslist and affairs.com. And he traveled for work. So whenever he was in a new location, he would post on some website, some local website, hey, I'm in town for 2 days, anybody looking to hook up? And I couldn't believe, as I just saw my life crumble around me, that this person that I thought that I knew was leading an entirely different life. Anytime he was not with me, he was involved in it. Anytime that I was upstairs in the house, he was on the phone texting someone that he'd met. And so if he was not like this, looking at me face to face, he was involved in it. He had built a couple of relationships that were more steady relationships, and they would be in touch with him and have him, do strange and unusual things. And he would do it while he was at work. And I didn't even know how to respond. I didn't know how to respond. I had that feeling, that place in my gut that just thought, I can't survive this, God. I can't survive this. I can't. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. I can't survive this. And I prayed and talked to friends and sought counselors and pastoral advice, and everybody said, you gotta leave. You have to leave. Men that are doing this don't leave this lifestyle. I mean, once they're in it, and they're in it forever. And I thought, but I've got a 2-year-old, and I haven't worked in 10 years. I don't know what I'm going to do. He's my primary provider. How am I going to survive? One day it was like my husband went to work, and we were married, and even though things were difficult, I didn't know it was this. And then, a week later, it's like my entire life crumbling around me. And I talked about it with my husband, and I said, well, since you're involved with her and it's at work and you're doing a lot of it when you're at work, I think you need to leave your job. I think that's a first step. You need to leave your job. And I said, the next step is probably treatment of some sort. And if you're not willing to get treatment, then certainly I think divorce is the only option. And he panicked. He panicked because I don't think he thought through, like, my wife will actually leave me. I don't think he actually thought I would ever leave. He also panicked because the woman that he was involved with at work had threatened to file a sexual harassment suit. Even though she was completely involved.
Yes.
She had.
Oh my God.
She didn't want her husband to know. And I was crazy. At that point, I'd lost my mind, so I called her at some point and said, girl, I know you are involved with my husband. And so she eventually told her husband, because she thought I was crazy enough that I would call him, and I was. At that point, honestly, I was out of my mind, because you don't know how you're going to respond to this. Everyone says, well, I know I would respond, and I would
You really don't know when you get in the heat of the moment and you're crying and anger. You got a lot of mixed emotions. Wow.
Yes, and
oh my God.
and as a believer, I thought there's a proper response. There's a way you were supposed to respond, and yet in my mind, I couldn't find the proper response. I just went to crazy. Like, I'm gonna kill you. What are you doing? You're kidding me. I've been at home with our baby and, trying to take care of our lives, and you've been off doing this stuff. Are you kidding me? And the phrase, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. If you have been a woman scorned, you understand that phrase, and I never understood it before. I didn't understand it until what came out of me was this fury. And I literally, I think I just went off the deep end. Went off the deep end. I didn't know how to respond, and even though I would pray, my prayers would be like, God, I want you to strike him dead. And then eventually, after he's suffered, bring him back. But, first, I wanted him to suffer really good. I wanted him to suffer. I found some of my notes. When you had invited me to come to the show, I found some of my notes. And I journaled about it the entire time. And I looked back and read. And one of them was like 2 pages of me praying, like, God, smite him. God, judge him. God, I'd said these, horrible things. But I said, I want him to come back. I want him to repent, but first I want him to suffer. And so I understand how the psalmist would, the psalmist always had these very emotional tirades. And I thought, that's where it comes from. It comes from that place of deep hurt. But always by the end of the psalm, they would say, but God, I want whatever you want. I want righteousness. I want holiness, I want peace, I want all of those things, restoration. And so I would get to that place by the end of whatever prayer, whatever journal entry, I would get to the place I was like, God, I want him to come back to you. I want him to find his way back to you. And I want to walk with the character that you would desire of me in this time. But I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to do it. So he did eventually decide to go to treatment. I think it was like God had backed him into a corner. He knew he couldn't go back to his job, and he knew his wife was about to give him the boot. So
Wow. So what, did he quit his job and got a new one?
no, he quit his job. One day he went to work and he said to his boss, my marriage is about to fall apart. I've done some things. I think I need a leave of absence or something. I have to go, and I have to go now. And now this is also the grace of God, is that they didn't fire him right away. That he told his boss this, and his boss said, okay, let's maybe put you on some medical leave. I'm gonna do some sort of family or medical leave for a little while you get this straightened out. And they gave him maybe a month or two of medical leave, at which point he started thinking about treatment, treatment centers, and we searched. And treatment centers, I don't know if you know, they're like $30,000. It's crazy. It's crazy. And we didn't have that kind of money. I was like, what are we going to do? And we searched all over the internet, and we were praying, and I didn't even know how to function. I mean, like, I got up, I took care of my son, but I just thought, I don't know what to do. And day in, day out, we just barely survived. I wasn't eating. I dropped down to about 97 pounds.
Oh my God.
Because I was just the stress of it. I couldn't eat. Some days you just feel like, I don't want to live, but God, I know it's not the answer, but I just don't know how to do this. I just don't know how to do this, God. And we searched for treatment centers and found one. Amazingly, this was a gift of God. We found a treatment center. It's called Pure Life Ministries, and it's in Kentucky. And they have both a live-in program and an at-home program. But at that point, we figured he needed a live-in program because he was involved in it all the time, every single day. He needed a new environment. He needed a place where he couldn't just run back to it because he'd established so many relationships here that, whenever he left the house, I didn't know where he was going. I didn't know who he was with. So I really felt like, you need to go. You need to be somewhere, and if you don't go, I might kill you, so you really need to be somewhere.
So can I ask you,
Yes.
Adana, how long was he in this,
A lifestyle?
involvement? Yeah.
Well, that's a great question.
Before you guys come to the conclusion, get on somewhere so you can
Yes.
get some help.
Yes. How long had he been involved in, like, pornography and relationships with other women and all of that?
The whole process, when you found out.
Well, it's kind of a long story. His first exposure to pornography was about the age of 12. So that happens. Young boys.
Yeah, I've heard that. That's that'd be an opening door.
Exactly, and that was the opening. He was 12. He'd found his dad's, girly magazines, and he asked his dad about it. And his dad said, "Do you have any questions?" And he said, "Nope." And his dad said, "Okay, great." And he, at a young age, developed a pretty severe addiction to pornography. By the time he was 16, constantly, searching out ways to get that sexual stimulation. And in that day, it wasn't like they were online. That was 20 years ago. It was magazines and different sources. So he, from then on, though, it just became kind of this stronghold on him that had captured him, and he'd been enslaved to it. I didn't know the entirety of the time that we were dating, and when we were married, the entirety of time that we were married, I didn't know it. He had this external picture, kind of perfect on the outside. He walked like a perfectly upright, righteous Christian, always in church. And so I didn't see it. I didn't know. But by the time that I found out, it had progressed from just magazines to actually contact with women. And there's several steps there that they get to that. But it was, I think in the early stages of our marriage, I didn't see it as much because it was infrequently, maybe every couple of weeks, every month, he would get involved in it. By the time I discovered it, it really was every single day. He had fake email accounts with different names that they weren't his names. They were, he just named names that he'd made up. So he created these profiles of different people. And he had maybe 5, 6 profiles that he contacted people under. And I found, I think this is just God. I'd said to him once, I need your passwords so I can close your accounts, because I need you to close them all. And I think he feared me at that point. That's all there is to say about it. He feared me because I was crazy and he thought I was going to lose his life. So he said, okay, I'm going to give those to you. But I did. I found probably, over the course of a year or two, maybe 8,000 emails with pictures and videos. He'd videotaped himself. They'd videotaped themselves. They'd exchanged them. Just the kind of stuff that I don't even have words for
And
it.
you know that is a sickness.
That's a sickness.
You know, but you saw from his childhood that was the entry point, and then he entertained that.
Yes.
And then, you know, like they said, you can't like let the devil have a little spot, because he come in and
he'll take
it
it
becomes
all.
a stronghold.
He'll take it all. Yeah.
And the thing that he entertained in his heart, it manifested.
Yeah.
You know, he acted upon.
Yeah, and it had gotten to the point that he confessed that he had just prayed that I would die. He just prayed that I would die so that he could be released to it, so that he could just fully engage in these activities. And you know, that's just the enemy had gotten a hold of his mind, and that darkness had just descended, and that whatever was in him was no longer, it's like he was no longer there. You could talk to him at times and it was like void, like I didn't even see anybody in there. I was like, who is this person? I don't know where you are. And so he had said that, you know, he'd hoped that he could just be released to it. He didn't want to be married anymore. And so I thought, I don't know what to do, God. He doesn't want to be married to me. There's no point in me staying. But he did agree to go to treatment. He agreed to go to treatment, and we'd found this place, like I said, in Kentucky, and it was this live-in program. And you know, it was something like $1,500 to get into the program, which we you know, we've got a little bit of savings. We're like, okay, we can do that. And we were trying to figure out what to do next. So he goes to the program, but then he's going to be there for 6 months to a year.
Wow.
And they don't tell you how long. They're like, it's based on his progress. It's based on what we see when he, you know, enters the program. And I'm like, I've got a 2-year-old and I've not worked in 10 years, and he's going to be gone for 6 months to a year. And I knew it was the right thing to do. I knew it was what God would have us to do, but I thought, I don't know how I'm going to survive. I don't know how I'm going to live. I don't know how I'm going to eat. And, you know, our house is going to go into foreclosure. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I cried out to God and just begged and pleaded for some answer. Like, how am I going to do this? And one day I was talking to a friend, and she was a good friend, and she said, Adana, you're going to have to get in touch with your dad. And now you have to understand my relationship with my dad. My dad is, you know, a wonderful man, but kind of disconnected. He's not necessarily, we don't necessarily have the greatest relationship. He's kind of detached, and he was always, as well, a womanizer growing up. And so, you know, that was in my history. And my dad, I didn't feel like he had a soft place in his heart for me. He was the type that when I would get in touch with him, if I needed things, he would be like, well, buck up, little girl. You know, pull on your britches like a big girl and figure this out. That was kind of his response to me. So I always sort of felt like the redheaded stepchild, though I belonged to him. I felt like I wasn't quite his. And so I figured I would get that in this circumstance. I figured I would call and he would say, okay, work it out. And my dad is incredibly, phenomenally wealthy. He's, you know, he's a doctor and he has lots of resources, but I didn't think that he would make them available to me, but I needed to call anyway because he was the only one I knew who had enough money to help. And you know, because I was drowning at that point. I was drowning. We'd started to get foreclosure notices, and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I didn't have the presence of mind to work. I mean, there's some people who say, well, you just get a job and you pull it together. And I'm like, I could barely get out of bed. Like I couldn't function. I just barely, I could do just enough to take care of my 2-year-old. You know, that was it. And so I called my dad, and I got his voicemail. I was like, thank you, God. Because I didn't know what I would say if I actually got his voice. And so I got his voicemail, and I said, Dad, I don't even know what to say. I don't know how to describe what's going on, but my husband's been involved in some things. And because of what is going on, I don't know where I'm going to live. I don't know how I'm going to eat. I've got a 2-year-old to take care of. And Dad, I really need you. And I just hung up. I hung up because I didn't know what else to say. I hung up, and he called me back. As soon as he got the message, he called me back. And he said, Adana, I'm going to come and see you. That's all he said. And now he lives a couple states away, so he, had to make a trip. And I was nervous. I was like, okay, you're going to come and see me? But what does that mean? Like, what's going to happen? Am I going to get a lecture? And the day came for him to come and see me. And he came into my house and sat down in the living room, and I was still really nervous. expecting that he would say, okay, pull it together, be strong, something. I was going to get a lecture that would make me feel even more shamed than I already was because I didn't know how to manage. And my dad had always said, Adana, you're going to marry some loser, so make sure you have a college education so that you can take care of yourself. And it's just, my dad just kind of harsh. He didn't have a lot of love and support growing up. So that's from his own history.
Yeah. That usually what happens too.
So, and I don't say that to, make my dad appear like a bad guy. He just did not have the kind of love and support that he needed in order to offer it me. That wasn't just built into him. So he came and he walked into my living room and sat down, and I looked at him and already had started to cry, and he said, Adana, everything that I own, everything that I have belongs to you. You don't have to earn it. There's nothing that you need to do to receive it. It's simply yours because you're mine. It's your inheritance. You're my daughter, and I love you. Now,
this your father?
This is my dad.
Wow.
Yeah, and at that moment, honestly, I felt like God had come down and occupied my dad. And it was like these were my heavenly Father's words coming from my earthly father. And like he was offering me, he's going to take care of me. He's going to provide for me. He's going to do what I need him to do in the circumstance so that I could survive. And it was the most amazing time and kind of a healing time for me and my dad as well. Someone who had previously not really been available to me. As much as he loved me, he just didn't know how.
Wow.
In this moment, he just came through and said, I love you. You're mine. Of course, I'll do anything for you.
Wow. And that was the voice of the Lord speaking through your dad.
Yes.
Wow. Especially when you knew from, growing up as a child that you never had that response, and the Lord showing you, wow.
Yeah. And it was,
wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. And my dad said, thank you. I have some money set aside. And he said, I always had planned to give it to you. He said, I figured I'd give it to you when I passed away, but I've got some money set aside for you. You just kind of got your name on it anyway. He said, but I'm going to give it to you now because you need it now. We're not going to wait. We're not going to wait until I'm gone for you to have this. And it was a really large sum of money. So much so that I lived on it probably for about 6 months.
Wow.
And, one of the things that I didn't mention is that my husband was an engineer, so he had, a substantial salary. And we, had a house and house payment and bills and all of those things that just you amass in life.
Right.
And so I had quite a great deal to try and cover. And my dad said, I've got enough for you to stay right where you are in this house for a while. I mean, we're eventually going to have to figure something out, but at the moment, don't feel like you have to rush off and leave. Like at the moment, you need one thing that's stable. Let's just sort of keep things as they are so that you can try and get through this. And he promised me, like I said, that large amount of money, and it came through. Because there had been times in the past where he'd promised me things and they'd not come through. And so I'd learned not to really put a whole lot of faith in my dad, which was sad. But there's some people you just know that they're going to come through, and other people you go, maybe. But I think that was also a lesson for me in learning to trust my Heavenly Father. There are times where we say, God, I trust you, but do I really? I don't know if I do. And in the midst of this trial, God was saying, I promise you, baby girl, you can trust me. You can trust me, and I will take care of you. When you have no answer and there's no way and you can't see a way out, I have an answer for you. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. And
so how long did your husband eventually had to stay?
Yes.
It took him time to
it did.
get set free.
Yeah, it did take him time. He was in the treatment program for 7 months. And for the first 3 months of that, they would allow us to have phone contact twice a week for 20 minutes because his counselor said he can't manage to be in touch with you a whole lot more because you're so angry And I'm like, I am angry and I have right to be. He said, yes, but he's fallen apart on this end. He can't manage. He can't deal with that. We need to get him to a place where he's a little more stable emotionally so that he can handle what's going on with you. And I was like, well, I don't care if he's more stable emotionally. He needs to hear some of this stuff. But so we would talk for about 20 minutes. And in this time, God's working on both of us. I'm at home, raising my 2-year-old, and he's in treatment. And I'm wondering if I should stay or not. I'm wondering if I should stay married. And I had like maybe 1 or 2 friends that really had, there's some friends that just have that different walk with the Lord. And there were those friends that had that different walk with the Lord where they really, I felt like they were praying on my behalf. And one of them said, give it time. Give him time. You don't need to make any decision in the next 7 months. He's gone. You don't need to make any decision. Just see what God will do. Just see what God will do. And so I began crying out and saying, okay, God, is there a reason that you want me to stay? Is there something that you're going to do here? And at some point, I was praying, and not that it was an audible voice, but you just get a sense. There's something that you hear, and you feel like, God, is that you? And one day I was praying, and sure enough, I was like, do I stay? Do I leave? What do I do? I heard the words, if you stay. Thought, if I stay what? And the words were, if you stay, what I have for you is better. And I didn't know what to do with that, but I'd heard, if you stay. Now I didn't hear, now your marriage is going to be restored. I would have loved to hear that. I would have loved the promise of the outcome. I would have loved that, but I didn't hear that. I heard, if you stay. I thought, well, I'll stay until he gets home in 7 months, and then, then when he gets back, I'll have the freedom, if he's not perfect, to kick him to the curb, and I can do it face to face. Yes, God, I'll stay. So, God had to do a whole lot. God had to do a whole lot in me during that time, and it did happen. My husband came home after 7 months, and he did initially seem really different. He was sweeter, he was kinder, he was gentler, but that didn't last very long. He came home, and we had, at that point, we'd lost our house. We moved to this teeny tiny apartment, and he was able to go back to his job, which was another thing. The woman had left his work, and most of the people that he'd kind of been involved with that had sort of, they had moved into other positions, so he wasn't with the same group of people, and the company had left a position open for him for about 10 months.
Wow.
His company had left a position open for him, which is unheard of.
Yes,
because this
was the grace and mercy of God right there.
That was the grace and mercy of God. And during that entire time, we were able to keep his medical insurance, and we didn't have to pay for it. For some reason, they had taken it out of some other account that he'd had set aside for his work. He didn't have to pay for it at all in that entire time. We didn't pay for medical insurance at all. So I was covered, my son was covered in that entire 10 months. But at work, they invited him back. When he returned, they said, yeah, we would love to have you back. You were a great employee. And I'm thinking, he was a great employee? Well, you don't know what he was doing on company time. But I didn't say that because I was like, okay, he's going to have an income. And we needed him to have an income because I was about to run out of the money that my dad had given me. And he went back to work, but he was nicer than he was when he left, but still, it's just like something wasn't quite right. And God had told me to stay, and I was like, okay, God, I'm still waiting to see. I'm waiting to see, but, we'll work this out, maybe. And we had gone back down to the place that he was in treatment for a conference about a year later. And we'd struggled through that year, but we got through it. And we went to that conference and came home and sat down on the couch and looked at me in the eyes and said, Adana, I've been back in the lifestyle since I've been home. Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
Oh, God.
Wow.
What? And at that point, I was certain. I was like, I'm divorcing this man. We're done. And two separate times, I tried to go to the courthouse to file, and the courthouse was closed. 2 times, I had the paperwork drawn up. I was like, I'm going to file. And it was days that the courthouse shouldn't have been closed either. It was like weekdays, and it was closed. And that, now, mind you, that's also God. I think he was intervening because I was about to take it into my own hands. And he wanted something different. And I kept hearing him say, if you stay. God saying to me, if you stay. I'm like, how could I stay with a man who's doing these things? And how could you ask me to? How could you ask me to, God? And I wasn't just angry at that point at my husband, I was angry at God, because I felt like, God, are you punishing me? Why would you ask me to stay with somebody who's repeatedly doing these horrible things and hurting me and like stomping all over our lives? Why would you ask me to stay? And I was so grieved, and I didn't understand what God was doing. And that's the hardest thing, is that my husband wasn't walking with the Lord really at that point, and wasn't a support. And then my God, the God that I had always run to, I thought, what are you doing? I know you. I trust you. Why would you ask this of me? Why would you do that? And I didn't necessarily get an answer right in that moment. I didn't get that sense that God was like, well, it's because, this is better for you, or your marriage is going to be restored. Or I didn't know. I mean, it was like, I felt like just this complete sense of chaos. Like, God, where are you? Where are you? And I cried out to him for such a long time, just saying, God, what are you doing? And I still heard that I was supposed to stay. So I did, but I at that point, I was just angry and bitter. I woke up angry. Every day I was angry, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew, to the point that every interaction I had with my husband was just ugly. It was just ugly. And I couldn't believe the kind of things that were coming out of my mouth. And it was, during this time that I felt like God really got a hold of me. He wanted to get a hold of my husband, but I think he really first needed to get a hold of me, because I was getting in the way of what God wanted to do because of how I was treating my husband. Now I thought he deserved it, but God, for about a year after that, began showing me who I was without his grace. And not that he removed himself from me, but it's sort of just like he stepped back and I would see myself. You ever like walk by a mirror and you go, oh, and when you see yourself like from behind or something? That's what it was like all of that year, as I was, in relationship with God, going, I don't understand what's going on. He would say, oh, you kind of bitter and nasty there, aren't you? I'm like, well, yeah, of course I am. And he said, well, are you ever bitter and nasty over other things? I'm like, no, of course I'm not. And then God would go, oh, well, you're bitter and nasty in that relationship too. And, oh, you're gossipy with that friend. And, oh, he was pointing out all of the things in me that were just ugly. And I thought, God, why are you doing this? I don't need you to point out all the ugly things about me. Thank you very much. But as he was pointing out these things about me, he's like, Adana, do you know who you are without me? But I'd always been kind of self-righteous because I was a good girl. I was doing everything right. I went to church. I read my Bible. I was not having an affair. And he was like, Adana, do you know who you are without me? And eventually, it's like I got a picture of who I was without him. Then in and of myself, I'm pretty wretched too. I've got terrible thoughts, and I can be mean and nasty to people. And there was one passage, and I wish I had it right in front of me, and I don't, unfortunately, but there was one passage that was talking about the activity of the flesh, so what it's like to live in the flesh. And, it said that fleshly activities are things like adultery and orgies and the like. And then it went on to say rage and wrath and jealousy and fits of envy. And so I felt like God was saying at the first part of this passage, now mind you, that's your husband. He's got the sexual part of it. But Adana, you've got some of that rage and some of that wrath, and you've got fits of envy and jealousy. And, eventually he really had me on my face, confessing the ways in which I had fallen short of his glory, and saying, God, I am. Without you, I'm a mess. Without you. And then he said, okay, now look at your husband. You're a mess without me, and I'm coming. I'm here with you, Adana. And my grace is all over you, and I've forgiven you, and you're walking in this new relationship with me, and when you have me, you are empowered to live differently. He said, but your husband, he doesn't have me. And so he's not empowered to live differently. He's still living in that old fleshly junk. And he said, Adana, I've forgiven you, and I'm with you. But I need you to get out of the way so I can get to him. And he said, your rage and your wrath and your anger is getting in the way of what I want to do in your marriage. And he said, so I need you to be merciful. Now, I didn't understand what mercy was. I had no idea what, and now, mind you, I should have. Now, I'm a believer, right? And so mercy is this huge concept in our faith. But I didn't understand what mercy was, because I thought, well, if he acts differently, if he deserves it, then I will treat him differently. And God was saying, before he's different, you treat him differently. While we were yet sinners, Christ loves us, loved us and came for us and died on the cross while we were yet sinners. In the middle of our sin, while we were a mess, he came for us. And he said, he is still in the middle of his mess, but I need you to love him right where he is. So we had been, at that point, we were still married, and my husband had gone back to work, and we were, kind of getting along, but God was doing this work in my heart, changing me, preparing me to be merciful. And, actually I do have a great story about what mercy looks like, because like I said, I didn't have any idea of what mercy looked like. And this was actually while my husband was at treatment. Sorry, this is not chronological. I'm stepping back a little, but while my husband was at treatment, his birthday was in November. He went to treatment in September, and his birthday was in November. Now, I was going to ignore it. I was like, I don't care about the day this man was born. I wish he was dead. I mean, that's awful, but that's where I was at.
Yeah.
That's where I was at. And I didn't want to celebrate his birthday. I was not the least bit interested in celebrating his birthday. But I was driving, and I was passing his favorite sporting goods store. And I'd been on the phone with him previously in that week, and he'd said, Adana, I'm working at this factory job, because I had to work while they were in the treatment to pay for, room and board. And he's like, I'm working at this factory job, and I've worn the toe off of my sock, and the shoe is actually wearing away at my toenail, and I'm bleeding. And I don't care. I mean, really, honestly, I was like, I don't care. But for some reason, we'd gotten onto this conversation, and I was like, I don't care that your foot's bleeding. That's fine, and hung up. But then I was driving past this sporting goods store, and as I was driving past, I felt like God say, pull in, buy him some socks. I'm not buying that man socks. We were losing our house. I didn't have any money. I am not buying that man a pair of socks. But you feel like God's just on you, like you just got to do what he's told you to do, even if you don't want to. Well, that's where I was. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes,
You know what I'm
exactly.
talking about. And so I pulled in, and I was arguing with God. I was like, I am not buying him socks. I am not doing it. And God's like, great, buy him two. I was like, what? Buy him two? And these are the expensive socks. These are like the $16 like wool socks that you buy at sporting goods stores that are real thick. I was like, I don't have $16. And he was like, great, buy him two pairs. And I'm like thinking, that's double, and I don't have it, God. He's like, don't worry about it. I got you covered. Buy him the socks. So sure enough, I bought him the socks, and put them in a care package. I was like, but God, that would presume that I care, and I don't. And God said, do it anyway, send him a care package. So I don't know what I threw in there, maybe granola bars and chocolate or something, and a birthday card. And he received it, and it was during a week where he was on a talk fast. So one of the things they do at the program is they are trying to teach the men about controlling their spirits and controlling the urges that they have. And so one of the things that they do is put them on a talk fast, so they're not allowed to talk for a full week. So they're not allowed to, I know as a woman, wouldn't that be crazy?
Wow.
So they're not allowed to talk. So he received the package in the middle of this week where he's not allowed to talk. And so he's sitting at dinner, he receives the package, and he opens it up, and he just begins to weep. And he can't tell anybody why he's weeping. And his counselor walks past him, and is like, dude, what's up? And he's just like weeping, tears rolling down his face. And at the end of the week, he was finally allowed to talk, and they had a service. And it's their testimony service, and anybody can talk about what's happened that week, if God had done anything to bless them, because they're trying to teach them, to be grateful and to be thankful for what God has given them. And thankfulness was one of those really hard things for my husband. He would tell you, he would say he had a hard time being thankful for his wife. And he had a hard time being thankful for his life, because he had his long list of things that I had done wrong and why I wasn't a good enough wife. And so that was part of what fed the addiction. He's like, she's awful, I can do whatever I want. So he had a hard time being thankful for me.
But you know what, Adana?
Yeah,
sorry for cutting you off. But
No, cut me off.
Back to Adam and Eve, how the Lord told Adam for him to watch the garden, but then, how Eve got distracted. You know what I'm saying? But remember, when God pulled Eve out of Adam, he was like, ooh, whoa, man, So he got excited, but then when this thing happened and she, gave the fruit to him, he turned around and blamed her
immediately.
for his shortcomings.
Yes, exactly.
And that's what this sounds like, you know,
Yes.
and it goes all the way back to Adam.
Adam, yeah.
And he blamed, say, Lord, the woman you
Yes,
gave me,
exactly.
she caused me to be like this.
Exactly. And he was standing there the whole time, standing right next to her while Eve was taking the apple, right?
Yes.
Adam was standing there.
Wow.
She took the apple, but then he's like, oh, it's her fault, even though he ate, even though he ate of that temptation.
Because, and it just remind me of when you mentioned that your husband had justified a thought that the enemy gave him.
Yes, yes.
You get what I'm saying? And he bought into that thought.
Yes.
To justify his selfish behavior.
Exactly. That is exactly what happened. Yes.
You know.
But in the same way, I was justifying my selfish behavior, and when I would lash out at my husband, I would say, I have a right to do this. I have a right to do this because he is an awful person. I have a right to lash out however I want. And God would get a hold of me. I mean, it was honestly like he was like a samurai warrior, you know, like with a sword. And he was like, the sword is the word of God. And girl, if you read the word of God, it does not say that you are allowed to live out of that place of your right. It says you're supposed to set yourself aside.
And you know what, too? You know what? This reminds me of a situation. I had came out of a domestic violence before the Lord brought me a godly husband. And you became your own judge, prosecutor, and attorney in this situation.
Yes, absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
And in that, like you said, you didn't see where you was falling short.
No, not at all.
You didn't see how merciful God has been to you.
I didn't.
And so a lot of times the Lord allow us to experience things to show us ourselves.
Exactly, exactly.
Wow.
Exactly, yes. Well, and you know, I was much like, if you think of the prodigal son, my husband was like the prodigal son, but I was like the older brother. You remember the older brother? The older brother who, you know, when the prodigal son comes back and the father's thrilled and delighted and throwing him a party, the older brother standing outside the party going, wait, I've been here this whole time. I've been working this farm. I've done everything. What about me? And that was me.
Wow.
That was me. I was saying, what about me, God? I've been good. I've been faithful. I've been, you know.
Right.
But when you think about in that story with the prodigal son, the father comes out of the party to meet the older son and says, aren't you going to join us? Aren't you going to come in? And that's the point at which the older son is angry and upset. But you think about it, the father has left the party for the older son as well. Now he ran to meet the younger son who was, you know, returning. But he left the party so that he could go to the righteous son, the one self-righteous son, who wasn't going to enter in to all that the father had offered because of his own pride. And that was me. And God was saying, I've got so much more for you. There's a party going on in that house, and it's a party where you're going to experience my grace. You're going to know what forgiveness is. You're going to know what mercy is. You're going to know what it's like to have my character where I love people who don't deserve it. I love people not because they've done anything to earn it, but because it's in me. He was like, you want to know that? And I was like, yes, because I'd always cried out to have God's character. I wanted God's character. You know, we do that as believers.
Yes, we do.
We cry out for God's character, but then we don't want to walk through the trial that might give us God's character. And that's what it was. He was saying, you want my character here. This is what it's like. This is what I did. I died on the cross for people who did not love me, for people who spit on me, for people who walked away from me, for people who have been, you know, running around on me, who have all these other lovers. I died for them. I died for you in all your other lovers. Yes.
Oh my
yes.
God.
Yes.
And you had to go through that dying process.
Yes. I had to die to myself so that my husband might see my and what's honestly now, God could have done it without me.
Exactly.
He could have been like, girl, you get out of here. I'm still going to deal with this man whether you're here or not. But God chose to use me in the midst of it and show me his heart. And yet that required me to be really willing. I had to say, okay, God, whatever you want to do with me. But then when he said, this is what I want to do with you, I was like, are you sure? I think you might need another plan because I don't want to go through that, God. I don't want that. And he was like, but if you want my character, you will walk through what I have for you right now. And you know, it says it in James. It's chapter 1, verses 2 through 4, and it's amazing. And it says, you know, consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. And another word there is patience. And patience or perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. And as I was walking through this, there was a time when, this was probably about a 5-year process of really working through forgiving my husband. And at some point, maybe about 3 years in, I was like, God, I'm so tired. I'm tired of what this cost me. I'm just tired. God, I don't want to do it anymore. And I couldn't see the transformation of my husband, like it wasn't coming quickly enough. Sometimes you can be in something and you're just in it a long time. And I was like, God, I'm just so done. I feel like I'd be happier. That's the thing. I felt like I would be happier if he just left and I could move on. And God's like, you know what, Adana? What I have for you is better. I remember that phrase, and it's better. And he wasn't still promised me the better was the restoration, because I couldn't see that yet. He was like, the better is me. The better is knowing me. And it's the completion of your faith. It's the maturing so that you will be complete. And this is the part that got me, is the not lacking in anything. It was like you walk through this trial, as it says, that there will be many trials that come upon us. But if you walk through this, that the patience and perseverance that it forms in you, and that my character will be formed in you in a way that you will be complete in me, not lacking in anything.
Wow. Now let's bring us up to date.
Yes.
How the Lord has restored
yes,
fully your
because He
marriage.
has. He has. Hallelujah.
You have more kids, and
we do.
share the ministry assignment,
yes.
as well as what the Lord is doing with your husband.
Okay, yes. So we do have more kids. I never thought we would have more kids, but we have 2 more kids. I have a 4-year-old boy. I have a 9-year-old. My original 2-year-old is now 9. I have a 4-year-old boy, and I have a 6-month-old baby girl. So praise God, we did continue our family. And my husband, at some point, he was just like, I don't want this life anymore. I mean, it was slow, but he would make little changes here and there, and he was like, I don't want this. He ended up getting into a seminary program. He just felt like God was saying, you need to go. I think it was probably more for the discipline.
So now he's studying ministry.
He's studying ministry. Yes, praise God.
And so I know the Lord has been using you.
Yes,
to go out and minister at different events. You are open. Your information will be on the screen.
Yes.
And I know that you are open to speak at women conferences and minister a word or at a women's event.
Absolutely. And I will speak about my testimony.
Yes.
But I also just lead like studies of the Bible, in-depth Bible studies.
Okay. This is very powerful.
It is. Yes.
You hear God's redemption love, His forgiveness, His mercy, His grace, and
we're still married. Hallelujah, we're still married.
And it just testifies of God's deliverance power.
Yes.
Amen. So if you could, Adana, look in the camera and pray for someone who may, have been struggling in their marriage, or who may be battling in the area of forgiveness that may not even be related to this.
Yes.
Your testimony.
Okay. So Heavenly Father, I just come before you right now. Father, I pray for everyone who's on the other side of the screen, every woman who may be watching this and just feeling like, oh, she doesn't know what to do next. She doesn't know where to go, Lord. She doesn't know how to proceed, because she may be married to someone, Father, who's walking in that type of behavior, who might be walking in pornography, or maybe having affairs, might even have other addictions, Father. And I just pray for every woman, Father. I pray that you will speak directly to them, telling them which way to go, that you will be with them, so that whether they walk to the left or the right, Lord, you will tell them just what to do, and they will hear you, Lord. And Father, I pray that you will minister, just meet the needs of their heart, Lord, whatever they are, that as they listen right now, that they will feel you reaching out, reaching beyond the screen into their hearts, Lord, and giving them peace and giving them hope and restoring joy. And Father, as well, I pray that you will be with any of the men in their lives, Father, that just need that addiction broken. Break that addiction off of them, Lord. Break it off. Draw them back, Lord. Draw them home, Father, because you love them and you have mercy on them, and they are your children as well, Father. And so I just pray for your amazing power to break off that darkness, And Father, I thank you. I thank you so much because your mercy makes redemption possible, Father. There is hope and there is a future, Father. There's a future in all of these relationships. You like to restore what's broken, Father. So we thank you. We just right now put all of these circumstances into your hands, Lord, and knowing that you are watching over each and every single circumstance, Lord, and that you too will be working out your perfect plans and drawing each of them, Lord, to completion in you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Spirit of the sun.